Good to be back with you for another edition of Weather Academy. I'm meteorologist Tom Atkins. Last time we talked, we were talking about hurricanes. So we're going to continue to talk about hurricanes. When we last left you, we were talking about the SAFFIR-SIMPSON scale, the scale that was invented to rate hurricanes in terms of damage and intensity. So Category 1 starts at 74 miles per hour. 2 goes into 96, and when you get to 3, that's when they're considered major hurricanes, and you can see how the wind escalates here. And remember, these are sustained winds. These are not the gusts, so you have to have sustained winds of 157 miles per hour or greater to make that Category 5 status. Now, the interesting thing is only 4 hurricanes have hit the United States as a Category 5. And the names are the Labor Day hurricane of 35, before they had a naming system. Then in 1969, Hurricane Camille hit the Gulf Coast. And then 1992, Hurricane David hit Florida. And a few years ago, in 2017, Hurricane Michael hit the upper peninsula of Florida and into the Gulf. But basically what happens here is the waters heat up, and remember, you need 80-degree water temperatures to sustain or grow a hurricane. So the water becomes warm late in the summer. The season peaks September 10th and slowly diminishes here. But some of these storms that are very ferocious happen even after September 10th. Let's take a look at some of the stronger and most costliest storms. Patricia in 2015, look at this, 2010, that's a Category 5, but it didn't hit the United States. Wilma, 175 miles per hour. Gilbert in 1988, 185. Now here's that Labor Day storm that I'm going to talk to you more about that happened in the Florida Keys in 1935 before they had a naming system, because this storm set the record for the lowest barometric pressure ever recorded in the United States, 26.35 inches of mercury. Here's an old-fashioned weather map. The storm crossed the Keys, got all kinds of damage, and just kind of went up the western Florida coast. The air pressure was so low with this Labor Day storm in the Florida Keys of 1935, weird things started to happen. Refrigerator doors popped open, as well as glass jars exploding from the extreme low pressure. This is a train on the tracks that eventually became U.S. Highway 1 across the Keys, just locked and smashed off the tracks. Now remember, their winds were greater than 175 with gusts to 200. So you had this kind of damage to hotels. And again, this is way back in the 30s, hence the black and white pictures. And also keep in mind that you're dealing with sand and on the beach. So when you get winds that high, you don't want to be anywhere near the beach, because people literally got sandblasted to death because of the wind speed and the sand. And you can see some of the fires that resulted as well back in 1935, the Florida Labor Day Keys storm back then. Now, another storm that's gained some notoriety is the one also that doesn't have a name. It happened in 1900. It's called the Galveston storm, and it hit Galveston, Texas. Now, back then, the weather maps were even more primitive. They didn't have weather stations. They didn't have satellite photos. They didn't have radar. Pretty much all they had was a barometer and their eyes and the wind speeds, okay? So you didn't get the full brunt of the hurricane until it was almost on top of you. There was very little warning as it moved across the Gulf into Florida. And you can see the devastation of this Galveston storm of 1900. Only taller structures like this church were left. And it also set the record for the greatest number of deaths in the United States from a natural disaster. Estimates range from 6,000 to 8,000 people, maybe more, that died from this storm. An interesting thing that happened as a result of this very catastrophic storm is that they built a cement seawall around a lot of Galveston so that when the next hurricane came, it could, well, with the storm surge, it would roll up, the waves would, and then they'd crash back down. 17 feet high. And remember, this is 1900. It's a great engineering feat, and it helped protect Galveston after that devastating storm. Another thing that they did which was very unique and hard to do, is they raised the level of the city. In other words, Galveston was so close to sea level, they wanted to make it a few feet higher. So they took all the buildings in the downtown area towards the coast and they put them up and they raised it. So you had a gap now between your first floor and the ground level. How did they fill it up? They took slurry and sludge from the Gulf of Mexico and pumped it in. Now that was a very smelly endeavor if you can consider the seafood and the fish and the animals that reside in the sea. But what they effectively did, again in the early 1900s, is they raised Galveston's sea level and they made it a little bit harder for hurricanes to demolish that area. None has ever happened there or in the United States that has been that devastating. We'll end you with the top 5 costliest hurricanes. This is Katrina, a very big storm that happened in 2005. Harvey hit Texas, 2017. Maria in Florida. The superstorm Sandy off the Jersey coast. And Irma also in that very deadly season of 2017. So, more fun facts about hurricanes, tropical storms, as they relate to us in the United States. That's Weather Academy for now. We'll be back next week with more. Make it a great Wednesday.